Hi, I'm Ava Francis, and this is my media ethics reflection number 7. So starting off with Robertson Black, 2022, we talk a little bit about advertising. So one of the examples used for advertising was a fitness craze of the early 2010s was exercise shoes, with soles that were seemingly closer to rocking chairs than flat. Millions of shoes were sold and made millions of dollars, advertising them as a way to burn more energy and activate muscles than by wearing typical shoes. I remember at this time, there was a lot of like Skechers and Shape-Ups and different like thick soled tennis shoes that were supposed to feel like you were walking on clouds. But I specifically remember Shape-Ups were like a really big deal back in the 2010s. Advertisements included evidence from studies, complete with statistics and exact percentages that made the ads look scientific. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission, among several agencies that regulate advertising, were not impressed. Its legal action claimed 2 companies conducted faulty research and used statistics that would not hold up in real life. One ad used statistics based on one person on a single day, and another included company employees as participants. This is not exactly faultless science. The company settled for a combined $65 million, but without admitting fault. U.S. Federal Trade Commission, 2011-2012. So this shoe advertisement is an example of what we would call a faulty ad, as seen in the textbook. A faulty ad reminds us that commercial speech traditionally has less freedom than political and artistic speech. In short, advertising that uses fact-based statements is supposed to be accurate. This does not mean that advertisers have to tell a whole truth. I found this to be an interesting factor. Another thing seen in the textbook was advertisements can use all sorts of studio photo tricks, like putting soup in shallow bowls to make the meat and vegetables tower over the liquid, or use something other than water to put condensation on a glass. They can use software to make their products look even better and their human models look flawless. They can pose their products in settings that are not real life. For text, they can say their product is better or best with relative impunity, because this is where puffery comes in to play. Puffery statements that are more likely opinion, exaggerated statements, and/or superlatives. This is legal. This also makes me think another real life moment. My mom used to work in television and film when we lived in New Orleans, and she would tell me like some of the behind the scenes like secrets that everyday people don't know. So those burger commercials for different places, like I think you could even say Chick-fil-A even, but like burger commercials, like the food is like glossed over. Like it's almost like fake food. It's literally for the actors to like take a bite out of and then directly spit it in a trash can because the food is polished. It's glamorized basically. So this section of the textbook really made me think that when we're talking about like studio photo tricks and whatnot. So legal, of course, does not always mean ethical. And I'm gonna say that again, legal does not always mean ethical. And no matter what, you should always be ethical. Okay, this brings us to our next section. This is Wilkins and Christians 2020. So this one really gets into detail about a few different things. One of them being, and I'm reading this straight from the text, from the professional codes of ethics to the expectations that professionals will act on behalf of a greater good, this obligation is usually articulated by codes and practitioners as a first order priority and is frequently, eloquently, tied to the responsibilities of citizenship. So even though these things exist, boundaries between acting in the best interest of the more narrowly defined public and that of the larger public are not clearly marked. This forces practitioners to search for ways in which somehow to balance or meet obligations to all. A way you can balance these interests, practitioners and the public must weigh such issues as, number 1, what are the ethical considerations when the public good can be served only at great expense to the company? Number 2, are time or financial constraints ever an acceptable rationale for compromising ethics? In other words, how much should these constraints be considered when choosing what should be done? And number 3, in an increasingly pluralistic society, how does one conceptualize the general public and then decide what is best for it? So that's just something that I found really interesting to kind of like highlight and really understand, like when it comes to the professional code of ethics, the expectations that you were supposed to have from a professional standpoint, like what is the line and where do you never cross it? And like I said, if we rewind, legal does not always mean ethical, but you should always be ethical in all circumstances, no matter what. Then we touched on a couple cases, ethical vision, what does it mean to serve clients well? This really goes into, I think it's really interesting because I think we talked about this a little bit in class, like your client, like you representing a brand and then your client, or you representing like your firm and your client, you have to make sure that you are not compromising like your ethics and really finding like, I guess you could say middle ground, like making sure that you're representing your firm well, but also representing your brand. Then it gets into chapter 7 in case 29, the not so beautiful game. And I think that's just kind of the like behind the scenes and the inside looks of what advertising really looks like, which kind of goes back to what I was saying about those like hidden secrets while doing commercials and things like that in the media that a lot of everyday people wouldn't know. And something that is a huge part of our society now is what chapter 9 focuses on, and this was the case 38, kidfluencers, the commodification of kids. The ethical concerns inherent to the sharenting that is implied when posting photographs of children, and this develops a commercial strategy toward maximizing audiences and revenues. In a real sense, the parent-child relationship is distorted in these situations, transformed into a business relationship in which the parents are now the employer. I found this to be really interesting because I think when you think of a kid influencer, you do have to look at something and go, is this just being like, oh, fun and silly and having a kid as an influencer, or is this exploitation? And I think a lot of the time, if not most, kid influencing falls into exploitation and a huge safety risk and safety hazard for a child. And this is something that the textbook covers, and a huge criticism is frequent charges of exploitation and even abuse. Kidfluencer parents often go to great lengths in the media interviews to assure the audience that their child's participation is voluntary and enjoyable. And it's not this, tragic situation where they're making their kids work against their will. And I just think this is one thing that the kid influencer world, it's dangerous because there are people on the internet who are not just here to look at the latest toys or see kid fashion. They're here to with ill intention, and I think that's the scary part about kid influencers. So the textbook has a section where it says you think, and it says, are parents who engage their children before cameras in this way exploiting them for personal gain? Are advertisers complicit in the parents' decisions for their own economic gain? Do either parents or advertisers have ethical obligations to their children that influencer practices deny? And I will say, I don't think that every person who shares a picture of their child on the internet or includes their child in brand deals is exploiting their child or has ill intent. But I do think there is a huge pocket, if not the majority, that is, whether they like it or not, whether they understand it or not, are putting their kids in these very vulnerable situations. That brings up the ethical concerns in sharenting, which again are amplified when posting photographs of children develops into a commercial strategy toward maximizing audiences and revenues. So that's just something to think about. Thank you for watching my reflection number 7. Until we meet again.